Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us for our second round of public engagement on the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Access Strategy, or PROSA. We're very happy to have you with us tonight as we can share what we've learned through this process to date and to hear your comments and address questions that you might have for us. My name is Ben Boxer, and I serve as the Public Information Officer for the Fairfax County Park Authority. And before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items that we need to get through for the record. Tonight's meeting is a staff-led virtual public meeting. And although we may have elected or appointed officials joining us during this evening's meeting, I want to reiterate that this is a community meeting and no official action or votes will be taken at this meeting on any part of this project. This electronic meeting is provided through dedicated video and audio conferencing and may be accessed on the Fairfax County Park Authority website. The public may also participate by phone by calling 888-270-9936 and entering access code 411406. This meeting is being recorded, and a copy of the recording will be posted to the website following this meeting. You can access the project website by going to www.fairfaxcounty.gov/parks. Using the search bar at the top of the page, just enter PROSA, that's PROSA, and you'll be directed to the project webpage. For those of you who might be joining us for the first time, PROSA is really laying the groundwork and long-term direction for the Park Authority to improve access to parks and provide an equitable park system for all Fairfax County residents. The outcomes of this multi-year effort will inform the Park Authority's capital improvement program and future land acquisition decisions. It will also align the Park Authority's capital planning priorities with major countywide initiatives such as the countywide strategic plan, Active Fairfax, and One Fairfax. Your participation in this discussion is extremely valuable to this process, and we look forward to hearing your questions and comments this evening. So how does this all work? Well, for the duration of the meeting, we'll be accepting comments and questions in the Zoom chat box. You can put your comments in the chat and we'll share them with others and respond. We're very pleased to have a contingent of our project staff on hand with us this evening to monitor the chat and help ensure that we capture your questions and comments effectively. Prior to the question and answer session, we'll go over a few more tools available to us to take your questions when we reach that point. I'm now pleased to turn the time over to our PROSA project manager and long range planning section supervisor for the Park Authority, Stephanie Cornejo. She will be providing us with an overview of the draft summary report and set the stage for our question and answer session and discussion of the next steps. Stephanie, the time is yours.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you this evening, and thank you so much for your time. Foremost, I'd like to pause and share a little about the Park Authority mission. The Fairfax County Park Authority is guided by our mission to enrich the quality of life for the community through an enduring park system that provides a healthy environment, preserves natural and cultural heritage, offers inspiring recreational experiences, and promotes healthy lifestyles. The county's parks and recreation needs are served by the Fairfax County Park Authority. The Park Authority manages over 23,000 acres spread across 420 park sites, and park amenities include over 350 playgrounds, over 400 courts, over 260 fields, swimming pools, recreation centers, lakefront parks, golf courses, natural and cultural resources, and over 335 miles of trails. To get us started, we're spearheading PROSA because of the Parks and Recreation System Master Plan goals and the Park Authority strategic plans, objectives, and policies. More specifically, the strategic plan outlines an action step to develop and implement an approach to county park planning and capital projects that considers resource protection, service level delivery, equity, recreation, and community needs. So PROSA is a strategy and framework to create an equitable park system where residents can access a quality park within a 10-minute walk from their home. The strategy will provide a path for improved park access and provide a balance of recreational experiences. And to get there, the PROSA strategy will improve 10-minute walk access to parks, It'll enhance access to complete park experiences, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Also improve habitat connectivity. And then we'll take all that data and look at it through an equity lens. And that is to say, factoring in equity using demographics and socioeconomic data to help analyze and prioritize needs. It's a data-driven approach to inform decision-making. Additionally, PROSA advances Fairfax County strategic plan priorities. So let's dive into these a little bit more. So for the 10-minute walk access, our goal is to identify which households can and cannot access an FCPA park within a 10-minute walk from their home. We've historically considered the proximity of residents, you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, to a park. That's to say, as the crow flies, or a straight line from the edge of the park to a given distance, like a half mile. However, today we're able to measure access using a variety of technology, and we're able to measure access to public park entrances and consider the surrounding sidewalks, crosswalks, highways, and the street network to better account for physically walking and the physical walking distance to a park. Our findings show that while 52% of residents can access a Park Authority park entrance within a 10-minute walk from their home, the remaining 48% of residents do not have the same access. And there are a variety of barriers that hinder access to parks. These barriers include large roadways and highways with limited or no pedestrian crossings, an absence of crosswalks or sidewalks, street networks with limited connection points, natural features like a stream or forested area, or a lack of a park or a park entrance nearby. Identifying where gaps exist is the first step to providing 10-minute walk access to parks, followed by assessing the type of barriers that prevent such access. And to provide equitable access to parks, everyone should have safe access within a 10-minute walk from their home. To improve and expand the 10-minute walk access to parks, we'll enhance access by adding existing trails and parks, park entrances or trailheads where feasible. We'll also look at infill. And what we mean by that is develop existing parkland with no entrances or park amenities that'll improve walk access to parks. We'll also collaborate with partners to remove barriers like adding a crosswalk or adding a sidewalk throughout the county. And then also we can work hand in hand with private developers to improve 10-minute walk access to privately owned, publicly accessible park spaces. And then in addition to those strategies, we can also focus on acquiring parkland in those areas that have a walk access gap to parks. So I've done a lot of talking. I just want to pause here for a moment. Now that you've heard about the PROSA 10-minute walk access, we'd really like to hear from you. And so if you could add your comments in the Zoom chat, we'd love to hear from you on some of your initial reactions. So if you think that these strategies are effective, if something else comes to mind, we'd love to hear from you in the chat. And great, thank you for adding comments already. Okay, I see a couple of great questions here. How do you define a park? Also, why was bicycle access not considered? We'll definitely get to an open Q&A a little bit and help walk through these questions. For the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and speak through the next component, PROSA. So PROSA is a framework for improved park access. That's not only being able to access a park in a 10-minute walk, but also access a variety of park experiences once you get there. So to do so, we're looking at complete park experiences, which consist of active recreation, passive contemplative recreation, social gathering opportunities, and natural cultural recreation. And we're going to dive into each of these in a moment. We learned from our first phase of public engagement back in the fall that residents want to be able to enjoy a variety of park experiences. We heard from over 700 people, and their feedback clearly reflects there's a lot of value to have a variety and different types of experiences in parks. While I mentioned those 4 experiences, it's also important to note that not all parks would have each of these 4 experiences, but that everyone should have that relative accessibility. So everyone should have access to these variety of park experiences, the 10-minute walk or a 5-minute drive from their home. For example, you may have your neighborhood park that's a couple minute walk, and that maybe there is when you play ball or play in the open field or have a picnic. And maybe within a 5-minute drive, you have access to a nature trail or more natural cultural experience or historic site. And then to help us understand the balance of these experiences across parks, across our local district and countywide parks, we'll evaluate them based on a park score. So let's take a moment to walk through the 4 main types of primary recreation experiences. There should be something for everybody at parks, from 8 years old to 80 years old. And active recreation experiences encourage physical activity and play, such as using sport courts, fields, playgrounds, trails, and fitness equipment, something that gets your heart pumping. Next, passive contemplative recreation experiences offer a place for relaxation, reflection, and mindfulness. Park amenities for this type of recreation could include outdoor seating areas, walking paths, trails, and gardens. For social gathering recreation, such as enjoying picnic areas, community gardening, or a sitting area, or going to an event, facilitates community interactions and connections. And last but not least, natural culture recreation experiences provide opportunities to connect with the outdoors and nature, as well as present day and historical heritage, such as enjoying nature trails or wildlife habitats, or visiting historical and cultural landmarks. So to improve park access and to a variety of park experiences, we have 4 main high-level strategies. That's to say, again, develop parks with limited recreation experiences to enhance the type of experiences available once you get there. For parks that don't have any development right now, parks that are designated for activities and facilities, we could also develop parks with no access to these variety of experiences. And I'll also say that's not to say that if natural areas we paved over any area that is designated and a natural area, we would keep as is our resource-based parks. And then also we collaborate with the private sector, provide a balance of recreation experiences and the development of their sites. And then just similar to the 10-minute walk, we could acquire parkland based on size and community needs and with specific recreation experiences in mind. So with that said, we're going to pause again here and want to encourage everyone to keep adding to the chat. We'd love to hear from you on your reactions to complete park experiences. And I'll also mention that while we're looking at your comments, all your comments are being taken down by our team, so it'll all be included in our public comment period. And we're also going to have an open Q&A portion in a little bit. Well, feel free to add your comments and other things in the chat. Oh, thank you, Nandy, for adding another question here. Appreciate your time. So to your question, is the goal to provide complete park experience that include the 4 types of experience, the 10-minute access to all residents in Fairfax County? The complete park experience access goal is to provide a variety of experience in the 10-minute walk or a 5-minute drive. So there's 2 different access components that we're looking at. Thank you, James, for your comment, and Greg as well. I appreciate them, and we'll definitely touch base on them soon. So with that in mind, I'll go ahead and talk about our next component for PROSA, which is speaking about habitat connectivity. Thank you again for your comments. So we'll look at habitat connectivity and identify opportunities to improve habitat health at existing parks and identify whether there are opportunities to expand habitat connectivity through existing parkland or potential future parkland acquisitions. We're looking at the health of habitats, and that's to say that we're looking at the prevalence of invasive species. We'll also look at the overall tree canopy at each park. And as we know, natural resources play an essential role in providing critical environmental and ecosystem services, as well as offering a high quality of life for residents. It's also part of the Park Authority's mission to preserve our natural heritage. And to do so, we have 3 primary strategies. First of all, to improve tree canopy, we can plant trees during park development and construction projects. And I'll also caveat here, the tree plantings would not replace meadows or other environmentally sensitive areas, but When you think about park development, when there's a paved sidewalk, could be tree lined. If there's a open shelter area, it could also be surrounded by trees. That's what we're speaking towards here in this first strategy. Next, we could identify park sites where the habitat health could be improved. And again, that's areas where there's a higher presence of invasive species, any other site-specific factors. And then also we can improve habitat connectivity through parkland acquisition. So adding parkland in the right areas to improve habitat connectivity throughout the county. And so with that said, I'm also going to pause here again. And it seems like there've been quite a few comments. So thank you all for adding your comments in the chat. Our team is taking them into account, and then we're also going to have an open Q&A and discussion portion in just a little bit. So bear with us here. Thank you, Sean, for your comment on the habitat connectivity, your initial reaction. The question is, what checks and balances will be in place so that trees will be planted in areas where they are lacking? This is an ongoing issue. Thank you, Sean, for noting that. That's something that that we're noticing too. We want to make sure that the tree canopy is available throughout the county and on par with the average throughout the county. Chris and James, thank you for your feedback here too. All right, great. We'll dive into these in a little bit as well. So thank you for your comment on whether we're planting native trees and plants, and then also the eastern areas of the county that James recognized too. So thank you. With that said, we're going to move to our fourth component of PROSA. Last but not least, we have our equity lens to analyze and prioritize projects. We'll utilize One Fairfax as a foundation using the One Fairfax tools and data. As you can see on the screen, One Fairfax uses 8 different demographic and socioeconomic indicators. The areas in the county where there's a high occurrence of these that we're calling opportunity areas. And they're called opportunity areas because this is where there's the greatest opportunity for impact for our residents. We're using US Census data, and our approach is based on the county's vulnerability index as a foundation for our analysis and findings. Additionally, our equity lens looks at density to understand how many people are served in the area. And to get there, this equity lens is an important component of PROSA. It commits us to intentionally consider equity in the decision-making process. It also is a data-driven approach to help guide equitable service delivery and resource allocation throughout the county. And then also recognizing opportunity areas in combination with a number of community members served will help us identify where there may be a greater need for park and recreation services. And so let's walk through an example here. Oh, and before I do, sorry, I don't want to be remiss here at all. I'm going to pause here, and we'd love to hear from you in the chat on what your reactions are to the equity lens. So I see there have been a couple comments coming on habitat connectivity. That's excellent. We're going to get back to all these comments in just a little bit. Andy, thank you for your questions about recreation experiences. I'll definitely highlight that that PROSA is our data-driven approach, and when we go to the site analysis, that includes looking community at the community level or site level. We are going to be including what is often called other public park providers. That's taking into account school fields, local, federal, and state parkland that's available and open to the public for use. And so we will be taking into account other public park providers. We'll also be taking into account we call privately open public spaces, so park-like spaces too that are available to the community. So that's something that we'll be weighing in and balancing in our next steps. James, thanks for sharing your concern here. Primary concern is that county staff is not prepared to handle equity, and this is an area in which much work needs to be done. Appreciate your comment. And actually, our equity lens is really a forefront to prioritizing and to analyzing needs and to inform our decision-making process. So we appreciate your concern, and equity is really important for our work and service delivery. Thank you, Bruce and Tim, for your comments too. We'll jump back to these in just a little bit. So I'm going to move us forward here with just an example. So now you've heard about these concepts. Let's look at a real world example using the PROSA lens that we've talked through. So as we know, PROSA is a data-driven lens for decision making. And let's dive into looking at this area on North Hill Park. North Hill Park is just northeast of Huntley Meadows, as you can see here on the screen. It's a park site that actually just opened. I don't know if anyone's been there yet. I think it just have a ribbon cutting coming up, maybe, or we just finished up here. I'll also caveat that this has been 10 years in the making. So before the construction of this project, there
It appears Stephanie may have frozen. Are you still with us, Stephanie?
Thank you for telling me. Oops.
Oh, there you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Your video appears to be frozen still. But that's okay if we can hear you.
Oh. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Can you hear us?
We still can't hear you.
We're trying to get Stephanie back online here.
Stephanie,
you
you
guys-
appear to be muted there.
Right.
Now
Can
you're
you
off
hear me
mute.
now?
Yes, we
Yes.
hear you.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Sorry to scare everyone. My apologies about that. My internet must be acting up. Please forgive the delay. So let's get back to it with North Hill Park. So we're here at North Hill Park, and just to get us oriented, we have Route 1, just the left here. We also have a number of commercial businesses around Route 1. Just across the way is the Denny's, and further south off the map is Walmart and Costco. And now that we have some context here, we're going to apply the PROSA equity lens. So as you can see on the screen, the opportunity areas are shown in that black cross hatching you see in about 2/3 of the screen. And the PROSA lens looks at not only where can we provide the greatest impact for our residents and also the number of people served in the area. So using our PROSA equity lens, we have the opportunity areas to the left, we have the density map on the right-hand side, and it's showing where we have the highest amount of people, specifically in the high and very high density areas. With our PROSA equity lens, we're going to now fold in the 10-minute walk access. The orange that you see here shows existing 10-minute walk access to our park entrances. You can see that these are not perfect circles and shapes because there are a variety of barriers that prevent safe walkable access to parks, such as the street grid. There could be dead-end streets, large roadways and highways with limited or no pedestrian crossings, an absence of sidewalks and crosswalks. There could be fences, or there may not be a park entrance or park nearby, or possibly a natural feature like a stream or a forested area. Going back to the development of North Hill Park, the construction project at this park includes 4 new park entrances where previously none existed, outdoor fitness equipment, a playground, walking path, a basketball court, and pickleball courts. This project not only adds access to the park, but also provides access to complete parks. So as you see on the screen in a moment, the new park entrances will increase walkable access to the park. So you can see the yellow stars here are showing where the new public park entrances are. You can see that it's filled in this gap here. I'm going to toggle back and forth for a second so you can see that again. So by adding park entrances and developing this park, we're able to improve 10-minute walk access and access to complete park experiences in this community. So let's run through the PROSA lens one more time here. So this project improves 10-minute walk access where none existed at the time. And actually going back to the density, that's nearly 4,000 people who now have access within this walk shed, that have access to this new park. As we know, everyone should have access to a variety of park experiences, and the construction of the outdoor fitness area, playground and walking paths, the basketball court and the pickleball courts will provide access to active, passive, contemplative, and social recreation. While the PROSA lens does include habitat connectivity and specifically the quality of habitats, this project specifically focused on improving access to parks and recreation experiences. So improving natural habitats at the site could be completed at a later date. And then last but not least, using our PROSA equity lens, there are areas for improvement in our opportunity areas and areas in the greater population. So before we start our poll, we do want to do PROSA in practice. So the PROSA strategy is a data-driven approach to guide park investments that all communities have access to a quality park, no matter where you live in Fairfax County. And these broad, high-level strategies are intended to be a high-level approach to identify and prioritize areas for park investments and improvements, like our capital improvements program, parkland acquisitions, trail system development, park development, and park condition assessments. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and open up a quick poll, and then we're going to get to our Q&A. So stay tuned, just another couple minutes. But really, we're going to launch a poll, and if you could check out the chat, we're going to have a link to the question here. We'd like to get an initial gauge and your feedback on how effectively do you think the PROSA strategies will accomplish improving 10-minute walk access, enhancing access to complete park experiences, enriching habitat connectivity, and analyzing prioritizing recreation needs with an equity lens. So we'll give folks a few minutes here to respond in the poll. And for those of you who might have joined a little bit later, we have a poll in the chat here, a link in the chat. We'd love to hear your initial reactions and thoughts on the poll, and then we're going to get to an open Q&A. Alrighty, we'll just wrap up our poll here and share the results in a few minutes. I want to thank you all so much for joining us this introduction of the broad introduction of the PROSA overview. And now I'm going to turn over to Ben for open Q&A. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. We really appreciate that summary and an overview. And we really appreciate the comments and especially the questions, which we are getting to right now with our Q&A session. We're very grateful for those that have taken the time to put those in the chat, and we will be going through that. Before we get started, let me tell you some of the Zoom features that we'll be using to facilitate this discussion. First of all, you're more than welcome to continue putting questions in the chat. We will be going through that as we proceed. You may also choose to raise your hand to be recognized by choosing the raised hand feature, which can be found under the reactions button underneath the video screen. We'll recognize you and you can unmute for your question, which we can respond to. Finally, we do have the option to call in. It's a little complex, but doable. Should you wish to dial in and speak to us over the phone, you can call 888-270-9936 and enter the code 411406. Once you dial in, a recorded message will ask you to press pound to join the meeting. Please note that if you are listening to the meeting online, there is a slight delay between the online meeting and the phone, so it may be challenging to hear both. When you are identified to speak, please state your name for the record and identify whether you're calling on your own behalf or representing an organization. So without any further ado, we'll open up to questions. And I do see we have a hand up in the room. Bruce Wright, would you like to unmute and ask your question, please?
Yeah, I'm Bruce Wright. I am president of Fairfax Alliance for Better Bicycling, but I'm here in my private capacity. I did ask the question earlier why bicycling wasn't included. I see that there's a 5-minute walk goal and a 10-minute drive goal, but as a cyclist, I think there's a huge gap and an opportunity for a lot of people to be able to get around if they can do so safely by bike. So I'm wondering why that was not part of the study.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, Bruce, thank you so much for your question. We appreciate your question in the chat and also raising your hands. There, I would say twofold answer. So one of them is that one of our other county agencies, the Fairfax County Department of Transportation, is working on the Active Fairfax Plan. The Active Fairfax Plan, I say as we complement each other because they are specifically working on improving adding sidewalks and crosswalks and other types of facilities to improve active recreation, so bike and walk access. So they really come in and fill that piece in for improved bike access. And second, our strategies are primarily focused on what we can do within our parks. Within our parks, we can open up park access points and trails. We also received grant funding recently to improve to add more bike racks to our parks.
Well, I'm very familiar with the Active Fairfax plan, but if bicycling is included and if driving are included, there's no reason in my mind that bicycling shouldn't at least be mentioned and fostered. I know you're looking at the parks themselves, but hopefully in the future, the Park Authority will look at expanding access. 2 examples, and I'll be very quick, is Frying Pan Park is a great park, very close to bicycle facilities, but to get there by bike is really hard. That last little bit, that's very close to the park. And Stratton Woods Park has a trail next to it. It's next to the Fairfax County Parkway Trail, but there's no crosswalk in front of the park. And cyclists would go there if they could. And it's a much better form of transportation than driving, obviously. But I understood that the Active Fairfax plan is looking into it, but hopefully you can include at least some mention of it. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir. Really appreciate the comment. Absolutely. We'll take a moment and go up to the top of the list. We have some comments and questions added in the chat. We have one from, and I apologize if I get any of these names wrong. I'm doing my best to read what's there. But the username Nandi, the first question was, how do you define a park? Can it be a nature center or a park or a recreation field or a community center or ...
Sure thing. So we're defining park by a park authority, park property, and that's what we're looking at. That can definitely, include nature centers or a recreation field. There are various facilities and centers that are on them. I hope that helps. And please let me know. Please circle back that question if I didn't answer that.
And I will say there was a follow-up to that question. It really speaks, I think, to a point you made early on. Really the difference between what's the standard of a 10-minute walk, why is that so objective versus a quarter mile or a half mile standard? I think you touched on that earlier on in your presentation, the difference between linear direction and bird's eye. Do you want to explain that again?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Ben. And thank you, Andy, again for your question here. So we know that it's national best practice for a 10-minute walk access. And that can be inhibited by a lack of sidewalk access or other safe passages to parks. And so that's why we're saying a 10-minute walk and not necessarily a quarter mile or half mile distance, because that may not be representative of walk access to a park.
Thank you. Also, we have a question here from Tim Abbott. Very good question. Are you considering school playgrounds and libraries for your access study? They seem to provide some amenities that apply to the study. Stephanie, you're muted there.
Yeah, sorry about that. It's like the quote of the year, right? So we are considering other school plus, other play areas we call other public park providers. And I might have misunderstood the question. Did I misunderstand the question or?
So it looks like to me the question is they're asking if we're considering the amenities available on school playgrounds as a part of our study. Like if there's a school playground within a 10-minute walk, does that count? Or are we only looking at park facilities?
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Sorry, I got a little off track there. The answer is yes, we are. So right now, the PROSA strategy is a high-level approach. When we're looking at FCPA parks, and we include the other components like our equity lens, and we zoom into the community level, we're definitely going to be including what other parks are available, whether that's a local park from another government like City of Fairfax or Clifton or Herndon. We'll also be looking at other associations, so HOAs like the Reston Association. We're going to definitely take into account school play fields and understanding what really is the true access at the community level and site level.
Mm-hmm. And as a follow-up to that, I do see we have a hand up, but as a follow-up to that, we have Mr. Abbott asked, how will that walk access data be shared with the communities once it's completed or developed?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tim. I think we're still, thinking about that a bit. Right now, we're at the high-level strategy component and how we should be looking at things for equitable park access and improved access across the county. And so we'll be thinking about that in the coming months. Thanks for bringing that up.
And I see Chris Golden with a hand up. Chris, would you?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
We can, thank you.
Okay, good. I apologize, my video is not working really well. I'm having problems with the screen freezing. So I think we discussed the equity lens or
Chris, if I could, I think you're breaking up just a bit.
Okay. You have people with disabilities helping you with the equity lens.
Hey, we're having a really hard time hearing you.
I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate that. We'll give Chris just a moment to enter the question in. As we do, and I'll skip down here in just a moment, I'm looking at the chat. We have some other questions. So this is a great question from Nandi as we wait for Chris's question. Is the goal to provide a complete park experience that includes the 4 different types of experiences within a 10-minute access to all residents of Fairfax County?
A great question, Andy. Thank you, Ben. So we're looking at a 10-minute walk access and a 5-minute drive access. As we know from our findings earlier, we know that 47% of residents do not currently have access to an FCPA park. Again, we're going to do that micro community access lens to see what other park experiences may be available through other public park providers. But with that said, it's important to kind of have an incremental goal. So looking at ways people commonly get to parks, and we're looking at that drive access and walk access.
Thank you. And Chris, thank you for your question. Chris Golden said, when it comes to equity, do you have people with disabilities advising, assisting on this project?
Stephanie, I can handle that. Chris, yes, we do. We have actually an ADA coordinator that is within our Park Services division, as well as hopefully a potential new ADA coordinator within the planning and development group as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amy. Moving ahead in the chat, we have another question from Chris. She had asked, will you be planting? Oh, my chat just.
So I think the next question is up a little further. If we could start back up at the top a little bit, and it's from James Albright. It's a difficult goal to achieve. Some parks have features that have aged and are not currently appropriate for changing demographics. How will you address this over time? I just wanted to put a plug in. So PROSA is kind of our project that we're working with right now to dovetail with our needs assessment that we have every 10 years. So PROSA will in fact inform our next needs assessment as well as a CIP. And that needs assessment has to be done in the next several years. And that's when we start to really look at the trends, the demographics, and actually ongoing inspections of our parks and our facilities, which Brendan can chime in as well. But the PROSA strategy will dovetail with our next needs assessment.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what Amy's saying there, thank you, Amy. Our capital improvement plan, which drives our funding for or our spending on new parks and new amenities, and also to update existing parks and repair and replace amenities. PROSA will be a big part of that review. I'm sure it wouldn't surprise you that some of our areas, especially on the east side of the county, the parks are older than they are on the western side. And so we'll be looking closely at those as we develop our CIP every year and also our bond for 2026.
Thank you, Amy and Brendan. And let me take the opportunity to introduce Amy and Brendan since they've been helping us out this evening. Amy is our Deputy Director of the Park Authority, and Brendan is our Director of Planning and Development. So we're very grateful to have them on board with us tonight to lend their expertise to these questions and provide you with those responses. This question, Amy and Brendan, might be up your alley as well. This was a follow-up question from Sean. What checks and balances will be in place to see that trees will be planted in areas where they are lacking? This is an ongoing issue.
I actually think this, as we do this strategy, we are looking at our parks more closely, and then with the information that we find, as that could be the lacking facilities or the lacking natural resources, then we work with our other divisions within the Park Authority to figure out strategies to make that balance happen.
Thank you. I see a hand up, Mr. James Albright, please.
Hi, thank you for letting me chime in again. So outside of the DMV area, what is an example, do you think, of a park system that you all hold up as something you're emulating and you're going towards? I mean, I don't want to hear about Montgomery County. We all live the same way, but like, where have you looked to see, hey, this is really a strong, equitable approach?
Yeah, James, thank you so much for your question. Honestly, we've done a lot of background research. So we've looked high and low, North America and across the world. So I have thinking on top of my head here are some of the systems that we looked at. We looked at nearby. So what are regional other counties and cities doing in Northern Virginia and across the way in Maryland and DC. We looked also at emerging trends in planning and providing a more equitable and accessible park system. So we looked at Chicago, LA, in South Florida and Miami-Dade County, and again, more regionally here. And what we found is most park systems are working towards the 10-minute walk access. It's a national campaign that's taking place. And the big critique of that, right, is, well, when you get to that park, what can you access? And that's where we bring in complete parks and complete park experiences, because we want people, when they get to that park, to really have something for everyone at every park. And then in addition to that, the third component of PROSA is speaking to one of our major components of the Park Authority's mission, which is focused on conservation of natural areas and lands. And then there has been, especially in the last several years, a lot of research and examples of park equity, improving access for everyone. And we brought in the One Fairfax policy led by Fairfax County, adopted by the Park Authority Board back in 2016. It is the forefront at PROSA. I hope that answers your question. It'll be a follow-up question or anything.
Thank you,
Okay.
Stephanie.
Thank you.
Another great follow-up question, Stephanie. I think you touched on this briefly before with respect to schools, but Nandi followed up with there are many communities, cities in Fairfax County that provide recreation experiences. How is PROSA going to include parks or experiences provided by regional or other local agencies?
Yeah, thank you for bringing this one up. It's an excellent question. We are not looking to duplicate services, right? So if we have a park and it's nearby a school, if that school has, for example, a very accessible playground or play area, at the park across the street, we're looking to do a variety of things, maybe a skate park, maybe it's a sitting area and picnic area. So we're going to look at how the existing park infrastructure and access infrastructure complements each other, and what we can do on our parkland to improve those variety of experiences. So yes, they will be included and analyzed.
Thank you. We have another comment from the question from Tim Abbott. If a trail is needed through an undeveloped forested park to increase access, what is considered or what could be considered in trail location to minimize impacts on habitat connectivity? It seems more like a strategy question of something that could be analyzed using PROSA, but didn't know if anyone in their group here might have anything to add to that in response to that question.
Yeah, Ben, I can take that. When we master plan parks, we do also master plan the trail system, with the exception of our Spring Valley parks, where those are primarily 4 trails. So we do look for connections to neighborhoods and sidewalks and other things. Again, Active Fairfax is also doing that as well, and we're a partner in that effort. So to minimize the impact on the land, we're actually doing more natural surface trails, which are blend in with the land much better than, as you can imagine, asphalt trails. So we're trying to do more natural surface trails as well. So it's a whole effort. Trails are one of the biggest things that folks want, amenities that folks want in the county and in the area. So we're putting a lot of effort into how we connect trails and how we connect parks and communities.
Thank you, Brandon. We really appreciate that. As we continue to go through some of these questions, let me throw some ideas out.
We're sorry, your conference is ending now. Please hang up.
Is everything still good? Don, could I get just a check with our IT staff just to make sure that everything is still up and running properly?
We're still up and running.
Okay, thank you. Okay, just want to make sure we're getting all this for the record. As we continue through the list of questions that we're getting, and by the way, again, thank you for all these wonderful questions related to PROSA. I wanted to throw out a couple of thoughts if it helps any who would like to ask some additional questions. We are looking to see, we'd like to know how you see the results of PROSA helping you, your family, or your community. If you have thoughts on that, please feel free to enter those in the chat. We would really love to incorporate those into our engagement and as we look forward to completing this work through PROSA. Looking ahead at the next question, I see another question from Nandi. What would be the strategy for prioritizing the changes needed with limited resources? For example, if one district needs to create a new park versus another district need to create to add access or entry points to the park, which would get the priority? That's a great question.
Yeah, that's a great question, Mandy. The easy answer is if we can create a trail or a connection to an existing park, that's obviously a great way to meet our goals. But it also a whole new park would add amenities and could be in an area where hopefully we'll be in an area that doesn't have the amenities we would want to put in. So it'll all be part of the review when we do our capital improvement plan. PROSA is going to be a big driving factor as we look and prioritize projects across the county.
Thank you. And I'm sure, one of the really neat things about PROSA in what we're finding is that becomes a really helpful strategic tool in analyzing those circumstances and weighing those opportunities. Thank you for the question. What is the timeline for implementing PROSA? I think we'll talk about next steps here in just a moment, but maybe Stephanie can give us a sneak preview.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. We appreciate it. So I would say there's a short-term time frame and a long-term time frame. So I'll go back to a point that Amy made earlier, whereas PROSA is giving us, through the data-driven approach, indication of location of where we should be concentrating on, right? Where are those gaps to park access? Where are those gaps to complete park experiences? Where can we improve habitat connectivity? And then also prioritizing those in an equity lens. But really, when we get to our upcoming needs assessment, which Robert put a link to that in the chat, we'll be updating our needs assessment in the near term, next couple of years, and that will tell us kind of what should be there. And so that's I would say a near and long-term implementation, right? Because they complement each other, and then aligning funding with both of those in mind. I don't know if Amy or Brendan, if you have anything else to add to that.
No, that's good.
Thank you. Scrolling through, just making sure I don't miss anything. I see a question here for Tim Abbott, or a question from Tim Abbott. When you consider safe walking access, are you expecting families to walk together or children walking without parents? Some trails have potential safety issues as others travel through highly wooded areas. Very good question. There's definitely a lot of different circumstances in the county that present different risks or different safety issues that are certainly considered, but I'd throw that one out to Stephanie or anyone from the team if there's any thoughts or considerations on that.
I would say that, oh, go ahead, Amy, sorry.
So, no, I think, again, right now, PROSA is at a very high level. And I think that as we start to kind of come down and land into the community, that's when we will have to look at those considerations. We certainly never want to put anybody at risk. So, and we want people to get to our parks safely. So, but again, we're at a higher level right now. And when we start to go down into the, get closer to the community level, we'll be able to assess that.
Thank you, Amy. We have another question from Nandi, an equity-based question. When it comes to equity, is age or increasing age a factor since Fairfax County is a graying community?
Thank you, Nandi, for the question. I would say that we are basing our equity lens based on the One Fairfax principles and the data and the socioeconomic data they're using. So it's looking at low income occupations, low English speaking ability, low educational attainment, medium household income, severely cost burden renting, home ownership rates, the population without health insurance, also household without a vehicle. Definitely when we get to the site planning analysis. So again, you mentioned we're at a high level. We get that site planning analysis, we do take into account also more localized demographics. That includes age, the spread of age in the community, and a lot of other factors.
Thank you. I do apologize. My screen is jumping around a little bit. So I'm trying to find out where I was just looking. We have a comment from Greg Kreider. And again, I apologize if I get this name wrong. Kreider. It says, in the interest of equity for diverse residents who live in the Huntley Meadows Park area and provide 10-minute access, will the strategy include addressing lack of access? He refers to the Huntley Meadows Park from the south is not really available unless one cuts through the woods using deer trails. So I guess what is PROSA doing to address lack of access to this park in particular, but I think parks in general, where there's not a defined path?
So I think we'll, again, we are looking at a higher level at this point. And as we get down into the community, we'll be looking at different challenges. Certainly Huntley Meadows is a beautiful park. It's also a park that's full of very rich cultural and natural resources. So all of those, I think James had mentioned something earlier. We have to look at things in a balanced perspective. So all of those questions will be asked as we come down from the higher level to look at the community level at that point.
Thank you, Amy. I see we have a hand up, Mr. Bruce Wright. You'd like to unmute and ask your question?
Yes, hi, thanks. Just wanted to make a comment about fair weather crossings. There's a lot of them in the county. I think there's one of the trail systems, and I can't remember what it is right now, that has 5 or 6 of these, and they are not accessible to the disability community. Bicyclists, I've fallen while riding through them because of the algae on the bottom, and other people refuse to use them. I'm hoping that there is a strategy for reducing those, maybe with low-cost bridges in the near future, and maybe prioritizing them based on the need. Thanks.
I think Brendan can handle that. We've got a
Yeah,
study underway.
yeah, Bruce, we are looking at that. We do. That's probably the #1 complaint on our trail system. So appreciate you bringing that up. So we're well aware of it. There are some that we've done for actual engineering reasons, power lines, etc., things like that, where we can't put bridges. But we are looking at our crossings now to see if there's a way to upgrade to a bridge or something else. Now, of course, bridges. I think the reason these were done in the past is probably because of the expense and also the engineering difficulties on some of these waterways. So we'll be looking at those going forward.
Great. Yeah, I know there's some low-cost bridge solutions that have come out recently, and maybe I'll send a note to a trails person there to put in a pitch for some that I think are important. Thank you.
Okay, absolutely.
Yes, please go ahead and do that. We would appreciate that. And they're hundreds, and I think they all went in at the same time. It's amazing. It must have been a true trend around 1986 or so. So.
Thank you, Amy. We do have another question from Sean in the chat. Very quickly, what are the deciding factors of where you will need to put a skate park? Again, I think this is on the strategic side of things and less the high level PROSA, but are there anything that we might be able to throw out there in terms of how PROSA might work for us to determine those where a potential location for a skate park might be?
Yeah, great question. I remember a little bit ago, I gave an example of like adding a skate park as an example across the school field. This might be where it was coming from. And I meant that as a high level conceptual example. This is as we've been sharing, PROSA will tell us kind of where we should be prioritizing park investments, park assets, park implementation and services. And our needs assessment, which will be kicking off in the next year or so. That's a couple-year process. Will tell us what should be there. And then that will give us a glimpse of how many playgrounds remain that we should have, how many other types of assets should be in the county. And then when we get also to the community level site planning, that's when we need to also determine with the community based on the needs assessment, what really should be there. So I hope that answers your question about the skate park. We don't have a determination for the skate park. That's really in conjunction with the needs assessment and also localized community input. Thank you.
And that's Stephanie, that's the reason why we're putting one in Mount Vernon Woods, which is a new park development in the Mount Vernon in the area near adjacent to Huntley Meadows. So that was from public input.
Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, Stephanie, for that. If I may, I've done a quick scan, and I'd like to try to combine 2 questions that Nandi has asked because they're right along the same lines. She initially asks, do you plan to actively collaborate and work with local agencies like homeowners associations or regional agencies and organizations to avoid duplication? And later on, she also added to that rec centers, camps, programs offered by, those are actually some of the, are you also including rec centers and camps and programs offered by FCPA and PROSA as well? So I think the general question is, are we avoiding duplication by including everything in our analysis?
I would say the short answer is that absolutely yes. We're looking at other public park providers and other areas that where their park recreation facilities are accessible to the nearby community. And then Brenda, if you want to jump in.
Have we involved other agencies in the PROSA process?
Yes, we definitely have been working with other county agencies throughout the development of this project.
Wonderful, thank you. A question from Tim Abbott. Does the PROSA strategy tie into work being done on the Mount Vernon Trail and potential access improvements across the GW Parkway?
I'll definitely bring back to, it sounds like a really site-specific question. The PROSA strategy is a high-level approach to looking at where we should be focusing location-wise across the county. And so at this point, PROSA hasn't been used for that specific one. Right now, we're in the development stage, and we're looking for you all and your feedback on this proposed strategy in the draft concept. So we're looking to get everyone's feedback from earlier this month through August 6th. That's when the public comment period will close. We'll analyze all the feedback we're getting and update the report with the feedback from you all and those taking the survey and our in-person outreach events. And then it'll go to the Park Authority Board later this year for their review and input and approval. And so right now we're in the development stage. It hasn't been approved yet. So we're not able to use it on other projects right now. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I do see we have a hand up. Nandi, thanks for chiming in, Nandi. I hope we were getting some of your questions fairly accurate there, but I'm glad to have you join us.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. When I talked about or asked a question about collaboration, I don't mean just asking questions, but how much are they actively involved in the planning process? And this is not the agency or the county related agencies, I mean other agencies. I live in Ruston, where Ruston Association provides amazing recreation experiences. So how do you plan to actively collaborate with the local agencies? Because I find when it comes to many local agencies, they don't talk to each other a lot or at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question and that observation. Stephanie, would you be able to talk a little bit about how we're coordinating with some of these organizations? Or I see Amy came off mute as well. Maybe you have something that you'd like to add.
Actually, Stephanie, if you'd like to, but Nandi, we coordinate every day with our not only our county agencies, but with our neighboring jurisdictions. We have all sorts of wonderful agreements, maintenance agreements or other related agreements in terms of working with our open space and green space. Reston is a little different because they are really robust and complete in a lot of different ways, but we certainly know everyone over there. Our board members are very active there. So we do reach out to jurisdictions and neighboring communities to make sure that we work together. It's a network that we really are happy to be part of.
Thank you, Amy. Looking through, I don't see any more question marks jumping out at me in the chat. James, we really appreciate the comment. Thank you for joining us this evening, and thank you all for joining us this evening for our conversation. At this point in time, we'll give everyone just another minute, see if there's any residual questions we can answer about PROSA before moving on to our final next steps discussion. Seeing no hands and no additional up. I just saw my chat box jump. We've got a couple more in the bottom here. It says, how do you want to stay involved, or Tim, how do you want us to stay involved or become more available to help with this process? I think those are some of the next steps we're getting to, Stephanie. But again, would you like to give us a bit of a sneak preview?
Absolutely. So thank you, Tim, for the question. We'd love you all, everyone, to keep staying engaged in the project. So right now, participating in this workshop is excellent. If you could share the project with your friends, family, neighbors, networks, colleagues, we'd really appreciate it to help stay involved and promote feedback on the project. And then also on our project website, if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a lot of great information there. Just go right down to the bottom. We have a little field that allows everyone to sign up for project updates. If you pre-registered for the workshop here, you probably already got that and we're on the list, or if you've already signed up. But if you haven't already, I would encourage you to do that as well to stay involved. Thank you. Thank you.
And then we also have one final question. It's really site specific. And again, I think, Sean, your question there, the PROSA link for the survey is available on the website. Perhaps we can add that link to the chat here in just a moment. And we'll give you instructions on how to find that as well. We'd love to get your feedback from it. Will this workshop be available for viewing before the one next week? We anticipate that it will. This will turn around before within probably 48 hours for sure. I'll verify that with our IT staff if that's incorrect, but I believe that's accurate. All right. Moving on, hearing and seeing no further questions, we'll go ahead and start talking about our next steps. For those of you looking for the website, you can see it clearly presented here on our short link. You can also feel free to take a picture of that QR code with your smartphone, and it will link you right to our website. We'd like to remind you that we are still accepting public comments about the draft report and about the process through August 6th. And you can submit those comments online through the project website. You can also visit the site to sign up, as Stephanie said, to sign up for project updates, submit comments and insights by taking our survey, and utilize our communications toolkit and flyers to help share this message with your friends and neighbors. If you have questions about the information shared this evening or about PROSA in general, please email us at prosa@publicinput.com. Again, that's prosa@publicinput.com. At this time, we'd like to again thank you all very much for spending a few precious minutes of your evening with us, sharing your questions, sharing your thoughts. We really appreciate it. We wish you a very pleasant evening and have a wonderful night.